Please join me. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on silent. And join me in a moment of silence. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. So we're without our microphones tonight because of a technical issue, so will everybody speak loudly. If you would please call the roll.
Yep. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed. Here. Brown. Here. Lawler.
Here.
Spicer. Here. Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atkinson.
Here. Okay. First item is approval of the agenda. If I have a motion for that, please.
So moved. Support.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as is, say aye. Aye. No opposed? Okay. Next item is public comments. Individuals wishing to make a comment on the agenda items, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Mary Leonardson. I live at 1035 North Clark Street here in Albion. I'm hoping that there has already been and will be continued discussion about the past 3 city manager searches and hirings. Looking at what worked well in the hiring of former and highly successful city manager Dr. Cheryl Mitchell, and what did not work well with the other 2. I also hope the city will look into its general hiring practices as well. Gender and race diversity has improved in many departments, except there is no gender diversity in the Department of Public Services, drinking water, wastewater, streets, cemeteries, parks, etc. I have been hoping and trying to get hired into that department for quite some time. I have lived in Albion for 38 years, at my same house for 33 years. I came here to go to college. I volunteered for 6 years in the ambulance service. I was on the festival committee for many years and have made my home here ever since. Since I had a close family relative working in the Department of Public Services, I haven't had the opportunity to apply or try to work in that department. That has changed. So 33 years of work experience in environmental chemistry and biology, 25 years as middle management for the 2 cities of Jackson and Grand Rapids. I've also worked for federal government, state government, the list goes on. I gave my resume to Councilwoman Spicer, as well as I've applied for 3 positions with the city, and only one of those is still currently open. I did have a meeting with the city manager and HR director about those 3 positions and the chance for moving forward, which was the plan. So again, I'll reiterate, I hope you'll think very highly and carefully about the city manager hiring process at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Garrett Brown, 1016 South Superior Street. So having worked with 4 managers and actually participating in the last 3 manager searches, I think one of the things I think the council should be considering is what I've noticed is there tends to be like a spectrum of, on the one hand, more of a kind of a passive administrative approach, and that can leave certain projects incomplete. I know when the first search candidate turned out to have a situation where it was, or the selected candidate was a situation where the person really wasn't following through on getting projects finished for the city, to the other extreme, which is basically a de facto mayor, right? So a manager who's not keeping the council informed, because what happens in manager council government is the manager tends to be a hub and the spoke of a wheel, because all of the council members are part-time, so we're not going to every single meeting, and that's not the council people's roles to do that. But what ends up happening is if you don't have a manager who's transparent and doesn't have a particular agenda, what ends up happening is the information you get is processed back to you in a way which inhibits your ability to represent residents because you don't have all the information. So I think that's something to really, really look at, is ask questions and say, does that person really understand how council manager government's supposed to work? Because I think what ends up happening sometimes is, which is happening even here, is there can be stakeholders in different institutions who have, they have agendas, but it also means the city should have an agenda that's ultimately accountable to the residents. And I think what happens is sometimes if you don't have a manager who's respectful of the council, they can be beholden to forces in the city that ultimately don't have the same aligned priorities as the larger populace. So I think that's something to take into consideration, trying to find a happy medium between someone who's, you don't want someone who's slacking, but then you also don't want someone who's basically withholding information from council, doing what they want to do, and then creating basically a constituency in the community to oppose their elected officials. And I think that I've seen both during those 8 years. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there other public comments this evening? If not, we'll go into the first item, which is the discussion and approval of the Michigan Municipal League City Manager Search. Ms. Joyce Parker. And we have, everybody has a copy of the schedule you've laid out and the material that you provided.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon to members of the City Council, members of the staff that's here, and the residents here as well. As stated earlier, my name is Joyce Parker. I'm the facilitator, recruiter that will be working with the city related to the search process for the city manager position. I put together the material and it was sent out to members of the City Council related to the agenda, as well as a schedule, a tentative schedule related to the search. And what I'd like to do is talk about the tentative schedule, get your feedback regarding the schedule, whether you think it's realistic or not, and then from there have some further discussion related to the candidate profile in order to put together the advertisement for the position. So with the tentative schedule based on a start date of May 27th, there are 6 steps related to the search process. First is the development of the profile, and I'm optimistic that we can get that process started tonight during the meeting. Overall, we've set aside 2 weeks, which would bring us into June 10th to get the profile for the position completed. And the profile basically is the actual advertisement that would take place. If you look at the schedule, the correlation of number 1 here is the same as here, but it gives you more detail related to what we will be doing to develop the profile. Then the second step is related to advertisement of the position. We've estimated 4 weeks, and that time frame would place us close to July 8th in order to advertise the position for 4 weeks. In terms of advertisement, we'll place the ad with the Michigan Municipal League, the International City County Management Association, with organizations that provide support in the professional position. We'll also use social media to get information out to potential candidates, and we can also include other organizations if there are certain specific organizations the city would like to see us advertise with. The third step is related to reviewing resumes once the resumes come in for the position, and basically we've set aside 2 weeks to do that, which would take us to July 22nd. The review process with the resumes is something that I would do as the recruiter. once we receive all of the resumes, they would be reviewed to determine if the candidates meet the requirements stated in the job advertisement. In addition to that, I will conduct interviews. In certain cases, I conduct Skype interviews. In other cases, it may be telephone interviews to determine if the information that is provided by the candidates is accurate, and to get a better sense of whether the candidate might be a good fit for the city. So that process will take place as well. Under number 4 is the reference checks as well as the interviews. So once I do the review of all of the resumes, I'll put together 2 reports for the city. One is a comprehensive report for all of the candidates that applies for the position, and I will actually identify whether they meet all of your requirements or some of your requirements in more detail. In addition to that, based on the interviews I have with the candidates, I'll put together a potential list of semifinalists that the city may want to consider for interviews. And with that particular list, I'll provide even more detail related to each one of the candidates. Generally, what we do is give each candidate a number or a letter as opposed to providing the name. And that process is done for 2 reasons. One, due to the confidentiality requests made by the candidates. And then secondly, to protect the city so that everything is evaluated in an objective manner. So for the reference check and the interviews, once I put together the reports, I'll provide the information to the city, meet with the mayor, members of city council. We'll talk about potential candidates, whether you are okay with those that are presented to you, or if you'd like to see other candidates be considered for that semifinalist or finalist list. We'll also talk about interviews, the time frame, what information is necessary in order to get the interview process underway. Once the interviews take place, under number 5, there's the potential, hopefully, appointment of a person to the position, and we've set aside 1 week for that process, which would conclude around August the 19th. And then once a person is actually selected, we'll do a more in-depth background check on that particular candidate. And once we receive the background check, we'll provide that information to the city, and the candidate hopefully can start working no later than maybe 3 weeks after we conclude the due diligence. And that would take you to September the 9th. Any questions or comments?
A couple of quick questions. On number 2, advertisement, you said, and organizations. Would
Yes.
you give us some examples of the types of organizations that you would be considering?
One organization we've considered in some of our searches is the National Association of Black Professional Officials. There's also a planning association in Michigan that we normally could or would advertise with, and then if there was a specific organization of your preference, we can include that as well.
Okay. Councilor Williamson.
I have a question because this is just interesting to me. So with respect to our last situation in the city, what challenges do you think you're going to face with the advertisement and recruiting candidates?
Well, I think I don't really have all of the details related to the search process the last time, but generally if candidates have questions, they normally make contact with me prior to submitting their resume. I had mentioned to the mayor that Albion is a good community, and I believe that managers, whether they're in Michigan or outside of the state of Michigan, recognize that, and they recognize that things take place too. So I think it's going to be a matter of whether they see the city as a potential good fit for them. And they'll do their own research as well.
Yep, that's why I asked that question,
Yes.
because I Googled myself and I thought, oh.
So are there things that help make your job easier to find good candidates and find multiple good candidates? For example, we had somebody that made a comment about applying for a job, and so we do have key positions that aren't permanently filled. We have people assigned to them in acting capacity. Is that something that would be part of, would incentivize somebody with the, knowing they would come in with the opportunity to make appointments of key staff positions? And are there other things like that that we should consider?
Well, I think what's important is the transparency, to make sure that if there are questions, that we respond in a timely manner to those questions. The other thing, just in terms of information for the candidates, I try to provide like the job description, and part of the process to develop the profiles, whether it's the candidate profile or the community profile, is to provide information to the candidates. So for example, if there are specific issues that you think your next city manager will need to address, we try to include that information in the brochure, in the candidate, the community brochure, as far as any challenges, any opportunities. If there are certain incentives that the city buys, we share that information as well. So I think the key is really being transparent and providing adequate information to each candidate.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the other issue, I think in some cases, is just being competitive.
And by competitive, other than salary and benefits, what are the other things that make one municipality more competitive than another?
Well, salary and benefits really are the two major areas, definitely.
Okay.
But, you know, they look at that and to make a determination in terms of whether it's going to be beneficial to them as well.
Right. Are there other questions by council?
Okay. The next item is related to the ideal candidate profile worksheet that was included in the packet. And what I would like to do is get feedback from you related to what you would like to see in terms of requirements for the next city manager for the city of Albion. So, for example, some of the minimum requirements to consider is whether the person should have a bachelor's degree in a related field, whether the person should have a master's degree, or should that basically be something desired as opposed to required. So it would help me to get that type of feedback from you. Once I receive the feedback, what I can do then is put together a draft of the job advertisement, send it back to you for review, and get it approved by you before we move on to the next step.
City Attorney Hartness.
So, in this particular case, our charter requires that the city manager have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in public administration or an equivalent. So, are one of those few municipalities that requires a master's degree.
Okay. Now, are there certain areas of experience you would like to see in your next city manager? So, for example, in some cases, some communities really want their manager strong in economic development, maybe in personnel, labor relations, and finance and budget. So, any specifics you'd like to see take place as part of the requirement?
I'm sure every council member has things, but City Attorney, you had something else, obviously.
All right.
Sorry, I've got the charter section up, so I just figured I'd give you all the requirements while we've got. So our
Sounds
charter.
good.
Yeah, our charter also speaks to at least, to the minimum requirements is, the city manager must have previous experience in city, public, business, or industrial administration. So, those are our mandated requirements.
Okay.
Everything else is bonus.
Okay.
You said industrial administration?
Correct.
Okay.
I had grant writing.
Economic development is very important. We have a lot going on, or things started to happen downtown. We need to continue that and see it expand out in other areas of the city. And I'm sure you didn't levitate here, so you probably drove here and you experienced our streets. So we have a lot of challenges with infrastructure, and that is definitely a priority. So experience in that would be very, very desirable.
Okay.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. I would say, community development. Some experience, or not necessarily, I don't wanna make it too, but just some kind, just
General experience in community development. Okay. Now, I know that you have Albion College here, so do you want any type of reference to intergovernmental relations or working in a community where there's a college environment?
That, I wouldn't make that a requirement, but it
Desired?
would be desirable, yes.
Okay.
It would be desirable, not a requirement, but definitely desirable.
The other question is in reference to the number of years of experience for the manager, whether you are interested in someone with at least a minimum of 3 years of management experience, and whether it should be in city management or just general management, or more than 3 years.
Would you like general management experience desired?
Desired? Okay. Now,
Councilmember Reed, I'm sorry to hear you.
I'm just talking to myself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Saying that at least 3 years would be
good. Okay.
I think having actual experience in municipal management in some fashion would be
I'm
important.
concerned that this portion is where we could be limiting our competitiveness, because if we try to get the most experienced, prime of their career manager, I think we have some limitations. So I think leaving it as ambiguous as we possibly can opens up that we could have people at the beginning of their career and also at the end of their career. Because we all know our compensation abilities and things like that on the council, and I think that we need to be as competitive as possible.
Yeah, I wouldn't,
Leaving it open to the full range of candidates would be.
wouldn't make it a requirement, but it would be desirable. So if you have 10 people that you're looking at, and as you go through your process of figuring out who the semifinalists are, having some actual municipal management experience in some category, in some level, I think would be a definite plus. I don't want to limit it, but.
Okay.
I think some of the things as far as the personal characteristics, and are you going to get to that in a minute?
Yes.
Okay.
But before we move to that, what about, well, it's here budget preparation and administration, so we could pick it up there. I was thinking budgeting and finance.
would agree with that.
Well, if they're in a management position, more than likely they're dealing with some type of budgetary type of roles. It's just kind of, it comes hand in hand.
Okay, want to move on to skills and abilities?
Councilmember Williamson?
Complex interpersonal problem solving skills. I think that should be like top of the list. And I'm not doing it to be funny, it's just to be very, very true.
Okay.
I think the candidate needs to have exceptional people skills, and that may be kind of where you were going with that. I'm not clear, but just enthusiastic, a dedicated optimist, and very approachable.
Okay.
Councilmember Clark?
I like people that can think outside of the box and be innovative for that position because of some of the things that we need to get accomplished in our city, in the other precincts. I don't like for people to stay in just one genre of focusing. I like for them to be able to see the whole perspective of what needs to be done.
Okay. I think there was a question over.
Councilmember Williamson?
Experience with working with diverse populations, I think, is very important. And I don't just mean that racially, I mean diverse as far as socioeconomic status. You know, we have a diverse population here, and I think that's an important piece that we want to bring in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williamson?
No, you first. You haven't spoke yet during this part. It's your turn.
Number 2, experience in labor and contract negotiation.
Stay over there.
Okay.
It works for the TV.
YouTube.
No, it works for YouTube.
Experience in labor and contract negotiations.
Okay.
Councilmember Williamson?
I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this right on the first time out, so maybe you can help me, but maybe a thorough understanding of communities like Albion that are post-industrial and complex in nature as far as diversity goes, but also just in growth and historical issues our community faces that tend to come up again and again and again.
Okay.
And it would be nice if they had a real grasp of that before getting here.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be just of Albion, but communities like ours are all over, right?
So can you repeat it for me?
Okay. Now you're asking too much.
Okay.
So maybe so a thorough historical understanding of communities like Albion that are post-industrial, have experienced many different type of schisms in the community that kind of come up in kind of a circular fashion over and over and over again. It'd be nice for a high-level understanding of those types of things.
Would that be something desired?
Probably desired. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. If you build the perfect city manager, I guess it'd be required, but.
Okay.
Different managers have different styles.
Yeah.
I think what would go well with the city staff and the employees in the community is more of a coaching style, very approachable, very accessible, trust and delegation as opposed to very authoritative. The manager's the manager and runs the show, but there's different ways of doing that, and I think it would go a long way for morale and improvement in the city staff if a coaching style rather than authoritarian.
Okay.
Councilmember Williamson.
I had a question on that note, actually, for you. I didn't see on the timeline, and maybe I missed it, but are we going to do like maybe a survey of city staff or kind of like a questionnaire about what they want in a leader? I think one of the things that we have to do through this process is do a little healing from our last situation. I think the staff were probably the most hurt through the process.
Okay.
In addition to the community, and so I was wondering, I know it's not in here, but is there a possibility that there could be some kind of survey or something done amongst our staff that could be anonymous, but can gain their feedback as well?
Sure, I could work with the city clerk to get something organized, either a survey or a meeting, but something where we can pull together their comments.
I think that that would be
Yeah.
really, really important after our last little thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me work on that.
Thank you. I appreciate your openness to that.
And what I can do too, before finalizing the draft, if we have those comments, I can share those comments with you. I may not include it in the advertisement until you have an opportunity to take a look at it and then give me some feedback. Okay.
That would be a really great information tool for the council to have feedback from city staff.
Okay.
That would be really great.
Okay. I can work on that. Yes. Any other comments?
I did like number 9, skilled in organization and follow through. I don't know how they would demonstrate that to you other than saying I can follow through on things, but it's nice to have people who can demonstrate success and seeing a product from start to finish. So.
Okay.
I believe every one of these that you have listed is important. That's
Okay, any other comments related to the candidate profile? Okay, if not, I also included in the packet, and it's not something that you need to complete tonight, but potentially within the next few days, and get this is the community profile worksheet, and there's specific questions related to the community organization that will help us develop the community brochure. So if I could get it back, let's see, maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week, maybe if you could send it to the city clerk and then she can forward the information to me, we can then use the information to put together the brochure. Yes.
Councilmember Clark. I apologize, Councilmember Brown.
I don't have that.
Neither do I.
You didn't get this? It was sent to you on email.
Yeah, it is. It's on the email.
Oh, it's in there.
By text. Yeah, yeah.
I apologize.
Okay, all right. I was going to give you mine. Yeah, there's 5 questions. And if you could give, provide the feedback, you can add your name or not add it, but provide the information to the city clerk and she'll send it on to me and I can get it to the person that's going to help me with the brochure.
Okay.
Okay.
I do have a question too about the candidate profile. This might be maybe a step ahead, but is there any consideration for people who, again, I don't know of any necessarily, but if there are internal candidates at the city already, is there any special process that you follow for that?
Only if they're directly involved in the process where, I've had a couple of situations where individuals applied for the position, but also had responsibility that conflicted with them being an applicant. So we made recommendations on how to resolve that issue.
Okay.
But that's the only concern I would have.
Everybody else with someone.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all I have at this point, unless you have other questions for me.
No, I'm sure council will get the input on the community profile in very quickly.
Okay.
You have more questions for us?
No, I do not. So once I receive the information, you'll see documents coming your way. You'll see the draft of the advertisement. You'll also see a draft related to the community profile, and I'll need to have you review it and approve it before we use it for publication.
Okay.
And then the other thing we'll do, we'll work directly with the city clerk to have the brochure on your website in case someone locally might have an interest in the position, as well as the job advertisement.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, public comments. If you have public comments, please come forward, state your name, address for the record. You have 3 minutes, please.
Hi again. Mary Leonardson, 1035 North Clark Street. I wanted to commend Councilwoman Spicer on our Precinct 5 meeting yesterday. I attended, and also Councilwoman Waller was there. And I want to commend the staff that was there that gave it their time too, including Ms. Snyder and Kent Phillips and John Tracy, and there were several, Emily Smith, right? They all did a great job of giving us great information, and as you may have already known, our topics were North Street road repair, Calhoun Council Transit. We had a survey that we all were given, and I hope that gets out to the whole community. Project Rising Tide updates. One of them that was big was, for us, was Caldwell School land, future usage, so that's something we're all watching very closely. Rental certification process and plan, that was also, I think there was positive and negative comments to that, so that was good to see that. Also the nice long list of communication tools that we shared at the end. This was the first Precinct 5 meeting of 38 years living here that I've ever seen, and living in that precinct, so I was glad to.
Oh, it was number 3.
Yes, for you it was number 3, but this, again, I just didn't see the first 2 over the last 2 years, so my bad. So I wanted to make sure you all knew how well that went and how much we're looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much.
Are there any further public comments? Okay. Let's see. We have no, I'm sorry. Oh, Ms. Parker.
Yes, this isn't a public comment, but I just wanted to bring to your attention, there's a survey on salaries and benefits in the packet, and I will need to get some feedback from you regarding the salary for the position or range.
Now, I saw information that listed salaries for various communities. Is there a survey question?
Questions related to that information?
But you said there was a salary survey or a survey on salaries and benefits, and I saw
Just the
this.
comparison from other
Okay.
cities.
Okay.
And that was more informational.
Yeah.
But I did not know if you wanted to advertise the position based on the previous salary, or if you want to take a look at the salary in any capacity and provide me with information on where it should be.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Okay. Are there comments from council members this evening?
Yes.
Councilmember Spicer.
Council comments. Yes, I just want to thank the residents of Precinct 5 as well as other city residents who weren't in the precinct that attended, and certainly want to thank them for attending, as well as the city staffers, directors. I'm not going to call names because I will leave someone out because I didn't write anything down. So I just want to thank everyone that attended the Precinct 5 meeting yesterday. Very much, it was very beneficial. I think we all learned something and felt very well with the takeaway. So thank you to the residents and city staffers.
Okay. Any other council members wish to make comments? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. Just a quick thank you to Ms. Parker for coming in tonight and being willing to work with council to find the city manager that best fit our needs. So thank you for yours. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll wrap up with, it was Memorial Day weekend. Everybody have a safe Memorial Day weekend. And I think that, oh, you had comments, okay.
Are we in the parade or not?
Yeah,
Scott told us to let him know
Yeah.
at the last meeting, to
Yeah.
shoot him an email if you're gonna be in the parade with him or
and
not.
I think he said gather over near Subway at 9:45. 9:45 over by Subway on Erie Street.
Can you hide no more?
So move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Okay.